screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rulers that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood wands of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted robbery, executed sloppily. The hypocrisy, this mockery, and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Tonight on Rogueways, we are blessed by the presence of a high-level mind and soul who brings us the gift of looking at the stars, the planets, and their influence upon us from what is a newer perspective for most, though an ancient and more occulted one as well. He has revolutionized astrology in the modern age and brought technology to bear in order to help us know more nuanced and specific, individualized connections to the heavens, and he's done this through the True Sidereal astrology. He is the creator of Mastering the Zodiac, a brilliant mind and a deep heart. Athen Chimenti is here with us tonight on Rogue Ways. Athen, how are you doing today?
Not too bad. Great to be on, though. Thank you, Lindsay.
It's always really good to chat with you. I love being able to get the look ahead for the year. It's always super accurate and helpful. And I do want to explain to the people who are listening, who are going, what is True Sidereal astrology? Give them a little insight. You know, even I think, right, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is something called sidereal astrology, which is also different from what you're talking about. There's the more traditional, or I guess more common, I always forget, tropical astrology, which is what most people are probably used to. And this is different from both of those. So yeah, give us a little insight into what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. So in the West, they're using, like you said, tropical, and tropical is basically seasonal. It's just the technical word for seasonal astrology. By seasonal, it means that they've essentially linked the zodiac to the seasons, which is why, like, when you look at the horoscopes and it's like Aries is always from the spring equinox and for the next roughly 30 days and so forth, and everything is sort of like evenly set around the seasons. The truth is, though, is that the sun doesn't actually return to the same point in the sky every year. So what was Aries when this whole thing started? Tropical started about 2,000 years ago. So what was Aries 2,000 years ago is now Pisces. So in other words, your tropical sign is actually not where the sun actually is when you're born. And we would think that, right? Most of us would think that if we are that sun in Aries, that's where the sun was when we were born, or any other planet in tropical astrology for that matter. But the truth is that most of the time, it's not where it was, and most of the time it's a different sign, and sometimes up to 2 signs difference, like with the True Sidereal. So True Sidereal is using the visible sky. We're taking into account the actual size of the constellations, which is different from, like you said, regular sidereal. Regular sidereal does use the sky. That's what the definition of sidereal is. We are referencing the stars in the sky. But regular sidereal uses an even 30 degrees for all of the signs. So that's the same thing where it's about dividing everything equally, although they start the division in an area that's much more equivalent to the visible sky. But with True Sidereal, we're actually looking at the actual sizes of the constellations. So for example, Virgo is very large, Cancer is very small. We're taking all of that into account, which is what I believe our ancestors intended on when they did create these constellations the way that we see them today. So yeah, that's the difference between all three. I still find them all accurate. I'm not, obviously I promote True Sidereal, but they're all great for different uses, and no need to shift. I think it's great to look at it from different perspectives and see which perspective is resonating for you at any particular moment.
Yeah, I think that's such good advice. And, being in the Western world and not having heard of True Sidereal, I had my original birth chart in the tropical system, and it made sense to me. And in fact, I didn't even know that way back when I was a youngster, I was actually predicting my future. And all the things that I found in my chart actually did come true, even though I had forgotten that they had been there way back when I was analyzing that chart. But then I met you, a handful of years ago, and I got my chart through you, and that was more accurate now. It's like I got to the sort of second half of my life and I discovered True Sidereal, and this chart actually reflects more of of who I became or where I'm going from here. And so that was really interesting for me to see that shift. And I am a different sign. I'm that 13th sign that True Sidereal takes into account, the Ophiuchus sign, which is also fascinating for me because we don't even talk about Ophiuchus in other forms of astrology.
Yeah,
Does
exactly. Yeah.
does
So
Sidereal take Ophiuchus into account? The
no,
other Sidereal?
no,
Okay.
no. So regular sidereal, because of the equal 30 degrees, you're going to come up to 12. So this goes back to like the pre-Babylonian times. You know, we have these sort of artifacts of the zodiac, and in all these artifacts, each sign is given exactly 30 degrees. But what I believe was going on there, so it was like 4,000 plus years ago, right? So even before tropical. But what I think was going on there was that they weren't doing it for astrological reasons. They were doing it for calendars and clocks. Because, try making a clock with 13 hours or even a calendar for that matter. You don't have those equal divisions, quarters, things like this. It makes it very complicated. So there technically is, according to our ancestors, yes, there's 13 actual separate constellations that do cross the ecliptic. Okay, Aries currently doesn't because of what was adapted by modern astrology, but traditionally Aries did actually cross through the ecliptic. So by definition, zodiac is like the cluster of stars that do cross the ecliptic, the path of the sun. And yeah, Ophiuchus is one of them. Now it was, removed back then, 4,000 plus years ago. And, again, to make everything, I think, more even. Now, I don't think it's the end of the world that it was excluded because it actually shares the same part of the sky as Scorpio. So for those that know what Scorpio energy is, we might say Ophiuchus is a more kind of like higher expression of that. I only say higher as in the sense of like you're going through evolution. So you're kind of evolving as you go through each sign, every sign. And so the later part of any sign is the more sort of like evolved or like transformed or developed of that particular energy. And so Ophiuchus coming after Scorpio in terms of it crosses the ecliptic after Scorpio does mean it's more like the second half of Scorpio, just like you might have a second half of Virgo that's more sort of, evolved in that sign and that energy than the first half. So that's all it is. And as you can see, you could safely remove Ophiuchus because it shares literally the same part of the sky as Scorpio. Here's Scorpio, Ophiuchus wraps directly on top, and you can just think of it as like the tail of Scorpio. But in this sense, yeah, we do use it. We use it specifically because we want to see exactly when the sun is there or any of the other planets are there. And we're getting more, I think, more specific to that part of the sky. And that is where the center of the galaxy is. We hear the number 13 is very much regarded in ancient cultures. And that is where the center, where Ophiuchus is the center of the Milky Way. So when you go outside and see that super bright band of stars, very energetic and really like the galactic sun, as our whole solar system is revolving around this galactic center. So very transformative. It's not surprising to me that that's the one that they chose to remove, or the 13th elevator on some buildings for that matter, right? But yeah, it is very important. I mean, just like all the signs, but it's really about that death and rebirth that the galactic center represents. It's a very powerful, very transformative part of the sky where we see really the deepest energy of Scorpio before we evolve out the other side or transform out the other side of Sagittarius. Sagittarius being on the other side is more of the post transformation, the post butterfly out of the cocoon, if you will, of Ophiuchus. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. It is so interesting that the 13th is always the hidden or the erased. The 13 is also like there's 13 moons in a year, right? And then that's also maybe connected with the suppression of sort of the divine feminine. And, you can look at everything and see there's 12 sort of obviously, and then there's like a occulted 13th, right? Like there's 12 apostles, and then Jesus would be the 13th. And some people may place him above, but actually he would place himself perhaps in right there with everyone. And it's just so fascinating to me to look at the 13 and how scared we are of it. There's a reason, right, why that mind virus has been placed, perhaps, like don't trust 13, right? It's funny too. And what is it like not ancient, like mythological stories or like maybe even sci-fi. We hear also about like witchiness in 13. You have to have like 13 people to make the circle or something to be able to do the
Mm.
magic. Like, I don't remember
Mhm.
where I'm getting that from, but somewhere back there.
Yeah, very alchemical, very
Okay.
alchemical, that 13th energy. It's like you kind of have the 12, and then you need that like alchemical addition to
Mm.
catalyze things and
Ah,
transform things. Yeah. Um, what was I going to say there? Right. So, uh, yeah, kind of lost what I was going to say there. But yeah, fucus being that kind of addition to it, you could say that you can use it or not use it, but kind of, oh, that they use, they give it the element of ether. They say a fucus is the
oh,
element of ether. And there's no other signs in the zodiac that use ether. But it does make sense to give it to a fucus, as it is, again, that kind of like, because ether is that very alchemical final, you know,
final
let's say
form.
high, yeah, final form of the five elements. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, I remember I was making sort of my interpretation of the, astrological things, and I wanted to include a fucus, and then I was like, yeah, what element is it, right? Everything's fire, earth, water, air. So what is a fucus? I was like, well, I guess it's all of them. And I guess that is what ether would be, is all of them
Yeah.
in one sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now,
Interesting.
traditionally, it is water because, again, Scorpio is water. So,
Okay.
like, traditionally, that whole eighth part of the sky is water. But yeah, if you're going to give any constellation ether, it would definitely be a fucus.
That's fascinating. Well, let's jump into so last year, we get to talk every year and look forward, and I love being able to see this with you, like what's on the horizon, what's coming at us, what should we position ourselves towards. But let's talk about last year first. That we talked last year about what was coming. Did things sort of seem to fall out the way that you had sort of expected as far as you can?
Well, hindsight's always 2020, and we're going
True.
to look back and see how it fit. But generally, yes, it did. We had a big it was a big year. I was talking about 2024 for like so many years before, and I think I was even talking about on your podcast for multiple years in terms of 2024 being, such an important year astrologically. And that's because we had well, a lot of things, but two major sign changes. Most notably, the most important thing, without a doubt, was that Pluto, the slowest planet that we use in astrology, was changing sign. And this is very rare for him to do this, about every 20 years. But what's so interesting about it is that with so much of the stuff we see going on, like for example, the United States, this was the US's Pluto return,
Oh yeah.
which means that Pluto was entering into Capricorn when the US was birthed in the late 1700s. And then now we have Pluto entering Capricorn starting in 2024. So that was like, big for those in the States. But even in the world, what we saw those following years, the late 1700s, was, a lot of transformations to the systems and structures that were going on or for the 250 years prior to that. And that seems to be the cycle specifically with Pluto and Capricorn, because Capricorn represents like our systems, our governments, our economic systems, our structures, everything we built. And Pluto is the transformer, very much like that Ophiuchus energy or even Scorpio energy that we were talking about. So as you can see, when you have something that's so much about death and rebirth, and then you have something like structure, the contrast between these two is so significant and so apparent, especially on a collective level, when you have, again, systems and structures being the sort of epitome of like, what we look at collectively. But anyways, yeah, so Pluto just now is officially in Capricorn, started entering Capricorn and officially entered 2024. So the seeds that were planted there was, again, renewal to the systems and structures. So in hindsight, I think the election, played a big role in that. We'll see how the election sort of plays out in terms of even just these next few weeks, really, and,
Right.
going into these coming months. But what got seeded in 2024 is really what we can expect to be the seeds for the next 250 years. Okay.
Wow.
So think back to 1776. That's basically comparable to 2024. Okay. Then think of what happened globally after that. And that's what we can expect to see globally as Pluto goes through Capricorn for about the next, I think it's 16 years or something like this. Capricorn's a little bit smaller than the other constellations, very slightly. So in late 1776, we saw the birth of the United States. We saw basically us going from monarchy, which was the prominent form of governance for the 250 years prior, and then going back towards republics and democratic forms of government. And so that's where we're at in the cycle, in the sense that we're only at 1776, relatively speaking. Okay, so it's very likely that what we see getting, really started, in this case, it doesn't have to always come from the States, but in this way, the States is leading the Pluto and Capricorn because it's part of its birth chart. You know what I mean? So any one or any government that's birthed during the Pluto and Capricorn is going to play a significant role in whatever it's about. So in this case, whatever we see getting birthed in the United States is part of what these seeds were planted. We'll likely see spreading through the rest of the world. So very likely that we see either same ideologies or philosophies or beliefs getting spread to Europe, similar to what we see being birthed in the United States. The East kind of follows its own, sort of system there. And I'm not too versed in terms of Eastern culture, but I'm still expecting, of course, major transformations and changes to happen there. And probably a swing between like what we probably still see as monarchies, probably also within the next 18 years, probably getting abolished or removed or just becoming extremely ceremonial. So I wouldn't be surprised if like in the Middle East or something, and we're already seeing it now. And in fact, 2024 was a big year for this. The Middle East is actually moving very much away from monarchy and starting to focus on things like rights and things, which it never did before. So we can see it. And that's something also very hindsight that we can already observe. But the astrology says that the trend's going to continue. So whatever was planted in 2024 is likely to continue for the next many, many years. The other one was Uranus going into Taurus. And sorry if my desk is shaking. I have a dog under here. I'm kind of like half playing with this. I talk to you. But Uranus going into Taurus. So Taurus is the more kind of like financial piece, and not just financial, but like the kind of material life piece. Also rules nature and agriculture. Oh, that's a little too much there.
Rough.
Yeah, a little rough there. Really excited. Okay, come here, Zeus. Come here. Tranquilo. I got to speak to him in Spanish because we're in Spain and he was adopted here in Spain. So he has kind of English and Spanish commands. Yeah. So Taurus being more of like nature, and when we think of ecology and stuff like this collectively. So what's likely to be here is, first of all, from a financial standpoint, I mean, we're talking about this financially, like with crypto and things like this, commodities as well. Jupiter was expanding all this. So in hindsight, we also saw the rally in the commodities, and we also saw the rally in crypto. So again, don't ever use astrology for financial advice, but in retrospect here, we can see that it was accurate. It's not always, exactly like that, but it was accurate this time. So we saw that, but we're going to likely start to see a lot of innovation with the financial sector with Uranus here. And Uranus will be here for a good solid, still another 10 years. So things like, probably turning crypto into more mainstream versions, probably CBDCs with the central governments, and even just generally like bringing in technology and innovation to revolutionize the financial system, or what we even value and what we consider money and things like that. We'll probably see a lot as well in regards to, the nature and ecology. So obviously it would seem like we've always had this kind of environment of like becoming more and more renewal and more kind of like innovative with ecology, but I think we're going to see it really ramp up. So I would say that also this being planted last year, which I didn't see too much of, but I'm still expecting that over the course of this, 8 to 10 years, we're going to see a lot of this. So whatever we used to think was like innovative with ecology is likely to be much more the case moving forward with Uranus here as well. So a lot going on, as you can see, but as you can see, the context is very much around 2024 being the sort of seeds that were planted for the next many years. And that's, of course, including this year. Like if we look at any of the predictive stuff for 2024, I mean, for 2025, we're going to, I think, be most accurate if we think of it as a continuation of the seeds that were planted in 2024. Now you have to realize at the beginning of any cycle is always the most, it's the quietest. It's like 2024 is like the bottom of the cycle. Like if you think about the lunar cycle, the new moon is like the quietest, lowest energy of that cycle. And so things do kind of, increase in energy wise and ramp up energy wise in terms of whatever seeds were planted there. So in that sense, 2024 could be more than 2020. I mean, 2025 could be more of what I just said than 2024 was. But again, important to read it as in the context of what was planted astrologically, at least what's mirrored in astrology in 2024. Then lastly, with Saturn, last 2 years, we've seen a lot of innovation, obviously with the AI and things like this. So that was a new 29-year cycle that started with Saturn. I think we talked about this last time. So if we think back to, basically the mid 90s, 94 there, that's when Saturn had first entered Aquarius during the last cycle. And that's where we saw basically the birth of the internet collectively. I mean, that's when we all got into chat and email. We started getting those AOL things in the mail and all this. So that was, really the start of the internet in many ways. And that's basically what we saw over the last few years. We can really date this back to past 3 years. But in 2022, when Saturn literally entered Aquarius, that's when ChatGPT got all famous and stuff. So it's very obvious that what we've seen got planted 2023 and 2024, or sorry, it was early 2023, excuse me. But what we see got planted 2023 and 2024 is basically the seeds for the next 29 years technologically, because Aquarius, in this case, not systems and structures like Capricorn, but Aquarius is innovation and technology. And things like this. So that's also going to be the continuation. Basically, what I'm expecting is that the internet has maxed out in the way that we use it, maxed out in 2024 in the way that we used it with, just social media and all this stuff we've seen. And now what we're going to see is a brand new transition into AI sort of interactions, interfaces, things like this, which we'll see peak in 29 years from now. So if you can think of what the internet did from 94 to 2024, we can expect that same sort of thing that started in 2024 with like AI and anything else for those that are very tech savvy. A big one's also quantum computing. I mean, a lot of things really started to get established these past few years with technology. And that's giving us a very direct clue as to what this whole cycle is. In this case, the 29-year cycle is regarding technology. So yeah, big year there for 2024. And of course, that means we have some sign changes this year if you want to get into it as well.
Yeah. I would love to look at 2025 and it's fascinating to see those seeds planted. I think of planting my garden and I'm like the person, I got a lot of Sagittarius energy and I put the seeds in and then I'm like, okay, why aren't they sprouting? What's happening? What are they doing? Like, because it takes a little while and then suddenly like weeks later, things will be sprouting and I thought they were dead. And, so I'm the impatient one, but I see those seeds and especially AI and, the shifting view, I see how we've sort of moved back towards Republic style thinking and people have remembered how valuable that is and kind of wanted to highlight that as a value in our collective systems. So I see all these things sort of having like really gone a little bit deeper into the consciousness and I'm actually excited to see where they go. I do, even though it wasn't emphasized in any of our media, I also see some of that ecological innovation. There's people who are out there like cleaning up entire lakes with a specific compound that isn't deadly to anything in the lake. And like, it just like scrubs all of this toxic stuff in days. And some things that were just really huge and anything we get in energy innovation that would be cleaner is going to be transformative. And we saw a lot of that. Again, not highlighted. It's not highlighted in the media, but like it's there and happening. So I see this, and I also, obviously, I think we all see the AI. I don't know many people who aren't at least playing with it, if not using it for work and for life and, day to day. So already that's seeping in pretty deeply, and I actually have high hopes. You know, you were one of the people who taught me that the astrology is a weather sort of system, and we get to decide how we use those energies, and that makes me really hopeful that we're going to do well. When you're talking about this next 29 years with this Saturn energy, I'm sort of thinking this question that's going to be clarified for us is, what is it to be human, right? This consciousness that we're describing, or however you want to describe AI, is going to be growing significantly over that entire time. Like, we're going to get real clear on what it is to be human and how it's different from this thing that we've created, good, bad, and neutral. So that's what I see, how those seeds might also be transforming us. So yeah, what is 2025 going to look like with all of these different weather systems going on and the ones coming in?
Yeah, so like you said, still early, like in the analogy of the garden, like we're not even going to see the little seedlings come up yet. Of course, if you go and analyze the seed, which we can do with astrology, and we can of course do that with the world, the roots are definitely starting to come out. And so we are seeing, that already started 2024, but that's kind of how we can think of 2025, is just slowly kind of building that momentum there. But how it's different is that, well, Saturn will go into Pisces. Okay, so this is going to be for the next really, I mean, 3 years, 4 years, if you really, let's say the next 4 years, if we consider Saturn's retrograde. So this is a much more subtle energy. So Pisces is more about spirituality, and it's more about the unknown and uncertainty and finding more peace in life. And so when Saturn comes in here, it's all about creating more structure with this. So on a personal level, it's like a really good time to really ask all of ourselves to be more soul guided with what we're doing, to make sure that what we're doing, especially with business, especially with our employment or productive stuff, because that's what Saturn's domain is, that we are checking in with our soul. We're making sure it's soul aligned. A lot of professions will be made during this time, built during this time, that are more soul aligned and more soul fulfilling for people, which is fantastic. At the same time, there can be uncertainty with these things. Pisces is not an easy constellation to work with. So in a way, all those kinds of structures we're talking about, both personally and collectively, go into the ethers a little bit. So it's kind of like we're under the influence a little bit. So there can be a lot of idealism. There can be a lot of hopes and wishes. There can be a lot of uncertainty or feeling lost at sea with things, collectively when it deals with the structures, or personally when it deals with our own productive life as well, or the things we've built in life. But it's a message to turn inward and to really follow what our soul's guiding us to do. So it's a very important time to, yes, trust those intuitions, trust those, beliefs and where our soul's guiding us, but at the same time recognize that we're probably under the influence a little bit, and just keeping everything a little bit grounded when it comes to these kinds of things in life. But collectively, I think we will see a lot of development in the arts, believe it or not. That might have something to do with AI and stuff, as I know that's going on. So a lot of developments with arts, a lot of developments with spirituality, anything that involves imagination and intuition as well. And of course, healing in the sense of psychology. So what I would love to see with this is, like, when we talk about things collectively, is like maybe giving more attention to like the homeless or the drug addictions that we have. This is all the realm of Pisces. Pisces is the part of society that's like, again, in the ethers and under the influence, or in the, just in that etheric world. And so Saturn coming in here gives us a great opportunity to start to now bring in some of that responsibility and some of that discipline to actually, build these things and take care of these things in society that are important to us spiritually and soul guided, and do require that sense of compassion and understanding and acceptance that, again, we'll be developing personally, and is so good to also develop collectively as well. So that's Saturn in Pisces. As you can see, it's much more woo-woo, much more in the ethers in terms of how it manifests, versus an air sign like Aquarius, which is much more clear. It's more yang energy. It's much more out there. It's much more clearly seen. But of course, it doesn't take away from it that, it's such an important time there to develop these more intrinsic aspects of life now that Saturn's in Pisces. The other shift will be, and by the way, Saturn will start to enter Pisces in February, to get a little more specific there, it's late February. So that means that we're going to kind of max out and finish up that Aquarius Saturn I was talking about with the innovation. So anything that did involve kind of innovation, that forward thinking is obviously part of the whole 29-year cycle I said, but there could be some things that really kind of either solidify or come to some kind of completion in terms of the seeds that were planted these next couple months. And it could even in many ways kind of culminate something. So we might see something culminated, like, I don't know, I just mentioned ChatGPT. So maybe ChatGPT kind of does something and kind of culminates it in society or some way, or something else with the AI kind of culminates that. Aquarius also, represents the aliens and the disclosure and things like that. So we've seen obviously a lot of developments there these past couple of years with Saturn. So we could also see some things against coming to their completion, their short-term completion here over these next couple of months, and perhaps apexing in February. So all that Aquarian stuff kind of wrapping up here just very soon. And then of course, then we slowly start the Pisces.
So that could be like disclosure type energy too.
It could. It's some sort of solidification, and it becomes, so just like it becomes clear what the cycle is about when Saturn or any planet first comes in. So when we saw like ChatGPT be released the same time Saturn entered Aquarius, we're like, okay, this cycle is like AI is a big, this is like what we're seeing now, 29 years, and it's part of the cycle. We can also see the same thing when a planet leaves, in the sense that it's just confirming. It's like a confirmation. And in case we weren't sure what the past 2 years was really about, we should definitely know by February what these 2 years were about in the context of technology and anything involving the sky. So that's why Aquarius rules aliens and UFOs and things. It's everything in the sky. It's everything weird and different that's outside of our, like, technology is different, right? It's like totally different. And then aliens, totally different, or anything else that's totally different or unorthodox is what this has been about, and what's likely completing.
So it could also be instead of the type of disclosure the alien community kind of hopes for, it could just be also like, yeah, actually that's just our own anti-gravitic technology, and also we have time travel or something, like something like that.
Right. And then what that is, then it's like, okay, that's what the next 29 years is about developing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Fascinating. So February, we'll look forward to that. All right. So where else are we in this year?
Right. So Jupiter is the other one. So he changes signs every year, basically. But he's going to wrap up his Taurus that we were talking about with the more kind of resource stuff. Now Uranus is still going to be there. Like I said, it's like another 10 years with a lot of the natural world and the resources and the financial. But Jupiter was really expanding that. So that's where we saw a lot of that development. But Jupiter will go into, and by the way, these things will likely shift in February as well, because Jupiter is actually retrograde at the moment. So it means that a lot of the things that maybe were expanding earlier in the year in regards to some of the financial stuff we were talking about, or in regards to some of the, natural, ecology stuff that we were talking about, will likely start to move much more forward once Jupiter goes direct. So he goes direct February 3rd. And so from February 3rd up until he leaves Taurus, which will be, let's call it June 10th, we can see a lot more forward movement there. So a lot of what I talked about in that context, about the ecology, about the financial, the earthy Taurus stuff, isn't, like I said, it's not done by a long shot because of Uranus, but in the short term, it's from Jupiter's perspective, it's like we're still in 2024 until June. From from Jupiter's perspective, from that perspective. So that part of 2024 that I talked about, definitely still being planted and still in development until about June, until Jupiter leaves. But that's when, of course, then Jupiter will go into Gemini, the next sign. So for about 12 months, we'll start to see some expansion with Gemini things. Gemini deals more with business, trade, logistics, commerce, information, communication, and short distance travel, cars, automobiles, and really anything that we would consider the sort of glue of society or the glue of life. The same way we can think of like communications as being the sort of the intermediate between interactions, or contracts that are the intermediumship between agreements and business dealings, and cars are how we get to and from places. So really from that whole world of that kind of intermediary glue, that's where we're going to see a lot of expansion. So we could see a lot of developments in the sectors of communication, in the sectors of logistics, business and trade, this kind of stuff, right? So personally, though, it's just really good to be open to learning and maybe going and developing our own communication, our own languages, be open to learning some of that practical stuff. Could be good for, business, trade, things like this. So just a bit of, a bit to learn there. Let's say it's good to be open-minded with Jupiter and learn about this stuff. But collectively, we could see a lot of developments with the Gemini stuff. Gemini also rules peers, neighbors, siblings as well. So Jupiter is the opportunity planet. So we could say that there could be opportunities in these sectors, in these parts of society, but also, again, personally with things like correspondence, communication, connecting with peers or siblings, things of this nature as well.
Could it fit to be sort of like there's some sort of, I don't want to say collapse, I don't want to scare anyone, but like contraction sort of, if we do see this like Doge government, slashing Elon Musk and everything. And so maybe there's some sort of, collapse or something, or constriction of the economy, of business or something. And then in June, we develop sort of our new way forward from that, and new decentralized more or less. I don't know. Am I making sense? Like, could that be sort of what that type of energy would be?
But Jupiter is not about contraction. So if it was Saturn coming into here, I would say yes, absolutely. Expect tightening of the belt. But this actually looks very, very bullish, very expansive, very beneficial for business. So if anything happens with Doge or whatever, maybe it takes some time until June. The Saturn in Pisces could be maybe a lot of the uncertainty, right? Not having uncertainty about especially government jobs and things like that, because that's what it's really about. So actually, now that you mention it, the challenges will definitely be for specifically government related industries, if you want to call them industries, with those government related sectors, and also major corporations, so big business. Okay, so those are the ones that are probably going to struggle. We're seeing, we're just dealing with probabilities. Like you said, it's the weather, so they're most likely to struggle these next 4 years with Saturn and Pisces. From that, because Saturn represents that. But from merely like just logistics, business, trade, the economy, from like more of a facilitating trade standpoint, it should be more expansive.
So it's actually good. Yeah, there might be some restriction for them, but like we're all actually growing, expanding, and increasing our connectivity, and I don't want to say productivity, but effectiveness maybe. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Effectiveness, efficiency, more trade, more opening for opportunities to trade, and better for the free market and that kind of a thing, I would say. Whereas then those that are already established, kind of in the, have their hands in government as well, or have an unfair economic advantage, or are the government themselves, those are the ones that'll be much more challenged, what we're seeing astrologically here.
I like it. If we're moving towards decentralization, I'm happy. So what else do we have? Is that 2025 basically? Is there more?
Oh, there's always more. But those are big ones. The sign changes, which are always significant. Jupiter is going to be, it has been already squaring Saturn, but it's nothing new. So we've had Jupiter square Saturn since August 19th. And this is where there is, a very different energy between like expansion and contraction, basically, to use these terms, and that these two things need to be synergized. And so while there's opportunities in some areas, yes, there's contraction in others, and we do have to kind of like facilitate that process. But in this case, since August 19th, we can think back to whatever, so there's some, collectively, you can look at this from any angle and ask yourself, like, what started collectively in mid-August, right? We could look at it economically, we could look at it just purely politically or whatever. And whatever that was, whatever did get planted in your personal life too, for the audience, like what did you start in August? And that it felt like you had to build it, but you're open-minded, but it's taking time. There's expansion, but there's also contraction. There's this kind of like you're building, and kind of energy.
Yeah.
We can see this solidify in mid-June as well. So these two planets, the planets which are really very important collectively, expansion and contraction, Jupiter and Saturn, are in a square. They're in a clash, which means they need to be integrated, need to be facilitated. But yeah, but it's already been in motion, and we can expect probably more things to solidify in what we saw getting started early to mid 2024, getting solidified in June, specifically when it comes to this transit.
It's interesting to me too. Like I said, I do that yearly tarot reading, and to see how these things match up with what came through the reading is always fascinating, because June is a big month. And even in the people I've been doing one-on-one readings for, June keeps being a really big month. So, we in February too. So we see these big shifts also come in more personally. And I think that's really the point of having this whole discussion, right? Is so we can all just think about like, well, where do we stand in relation to this? And what are we going to be doing? And what choices are we going to make? Because again, as you said, like this is the weather, right? Like, what do you choose to do with it? And I love that. So I know we're kind of coming down in time here. Is there any sort of thing you want to add before we get into where people can find you?
Sure. Yeah. So the last thing I would say about the year here is, just that the Pisces energy, I think, is very important to be wrapped up, let's say, the first half of the year, because, again, Pisces is about the spiritual and all this, but the North and South nodes are going to be finishing that sector. So they've been in this sector since mid 2023, so the past year and a half. And it's basically been saying collectively that it's important to, again, prioritize the soul, and we get, especially right now with Mars retrograde, get a little bit of rest, a little bit of peace, kind of take a step back a little bit, do what's soul-fulfilling and all this, maybe work a little less, do more soul-fulfilling exercise activities. So this is all wrapping up and really coming to some, I think, major lessons around this, both personally and collectively, mid-year. And so the eclipses will always follow this. So we have eclipses in March 14th and March 29th. These will be nice steps in the right direction involving this, bringing in more receptivity in our life. And then when we get to the eclipses in September, which, by the way, the eclipses are always important times. And right now they're happening in a sort of spring, autumn time. But September 7th and September 21st are the autumn eclipses there. But these are going to be the first set of eclipses where the North node's in Aquarius and the South node's in Leo, which basically means that, even though we've seen a lot of developments there innovatively and with technology and all this kind of stuff, we're actually, we're going to see more movement in that, not so much in a sense of building new foundations, but in a sense of needing to integrate this stuff more in our lives. So obviously integrating more technology in our life, but when we look at it collectively like this, we might say that if you want another disclosure date, pay attention to all the eclipses that are going to be happening between late 2025 and through all of 2026.
Oh, wow.
Because these are going to be eclipses activating that Aquarius. So anything that does involve that innovation, those weird things we're talking about, there are going to be new beginnings and new things planted, with each of those. Okay. So that's, you okay, buddy?
Oh, we'll look forward to those times. Is Zeus okay?
I think you just threw up a little bit of water.
Oh,
It's white.
we'll send love to
Yeah,
Zeus.
okay. Yeah, he'll be fine. Okay.
Hopefully it's
just clear. So I don't know what that was. Okay.
he's like, eclipses, we're going to be processing a lot. Let's get it out.
Yeah, exactly.
All
right. Still clear. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the thing. The eclipses, we really can't look at the year without mentioning the eclipses. They're nothing, out of the ordinary. We have eclipses, twice a year, every year. But that's when we're looking at them, basically mid to late March and early to mid, let's just say the whole month of September.
Well, that's exciting. Yeah, I really like this focus too on that spiritual. I feel like a lot of people are feeling this call to go deeper, to come to a new understanding of themselves and to move into that more and more if they can. And I also know you can help people do this, looking at your chart, looking at your personal astrology, and maybe even the context of the year. There's all sorts of really positive benefits to having this level of reflection. If people want to go to the favorite things tab on rogueways.org, they can actually click over on the True Sidereal Astrology button and get to all of your services you offer. Do you want to share anything about the services and invite people to those?
Just that if you're new to True Sidereal and you haven't looked at the True Sidereal signs for your chart, you haven't looked at your True Sidereal chart, I invite you to do so. You can go to the website, masteringthezodiac.com. You can also just Google Mastering the Zodiac. And there's a free chart calculator. So you don't even need your time of birth. If you have it, it's great. If not, just, type in your birth details, your date of birth, basically, and you'll see exactly where all the planets were when you were born, as well as a little mini report under there, which gives you a bit of an interpretation as well. And so just see if it resonates. See if it's, a good time for you to explore True Sidereal, see how it fits. And go from there, and if you want more, there's tons of free stuff, courses. We do, now that the live streams, we're meeting every week now with live streams, readings, all that good stuff. But just, I invite everyone to at least just go check it out, see if it resonates with you, and go from there.
Yeah, get your free chart. And, I love that you have the newsletter. I get this every week, and that's really valuable. I follow you on Instagram. You have like a quick summary of the week every week. You just have so much for people. So I hope people check you out there as well. And like I said, if you go to the favorite things tab on Rogueways and click over, then you can also find it that way. So any final thoughts you want to offer people as we wrap up here?
No, just, trust yourself and connect with your heart and connect with your soul, and do the best you can, and follow that inner guidance. There's so much noise in life, and so much information, it's so overwhelming. And I think that we all have all the answers within, and we don't even really need tools like astrology and stuff, but anything that does help you, connect more with your inner guidance, maybe connect more with nature, the better. So I like to always promote that. So I'll just end it with that. Get some nature, get some alone time. I think they're very important in times like this.
Beautifully said, and it is a beautiful thing. Fellow travelers of the path, in the end, it does not matter whether you look at the sky from 2,000 years ago, the sky today, the sky broken up into perfectly even slices, or the sky split into 13 varied chunks. If you're looking up and out at all, you are also looking down and in. And that is where the magic happens. You are the celestial heavens in a form knowable and actionable, and you are all the energies of the universe balanced and bundled in the unique way only you could know and be. So find those stars and planets within you and let them guide you toward your truest immersion in self. And until you rise, united with all, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Glued to these screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rulers that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood wands of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The hypocrisy, this mockery, and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than